I'm going to start this off like any good video essay. 1, with a spoiler warning because I'm classy like that, so check the description. And 2, with a fancy definition of a buzzword to make me sound smarter than I actually am. Urban Dictionary defines girlbossing as making something or someone appear as a feminist inspiration for profit, despite the numerous flaws of the person, or someone who is lauded as being a feminist icon, despite actually being unfeminist. I.e., girlbossing is when you abuse power for personal gain but it's girly pop, or when you make your abuse of power girly pop on purpose to evade criticism.
Meanwhile, I am adoring your cross-country exposition of the ugly underbelly of American capitalism. So crucial. But I wonder if you could make room in the rotation for a few feel-good stories.
Stefani, our videos are making a difference.
Yeah, a difference in how bummed I am.
First, it helps to state the obvious. Good people can be good characters, good people can be bad characters, bad people can be good characters, and bad people can be bad characters. It all depends on how their positive or negative traits are used by that piece of media. Contrary to the past, modern girlboss characters are usually, and there's a hard emphasis on usually, not always, a criticism of the culture and in some cases, can even learn and grow from their behavior. These girlbosses can either directly reflect what the audience already knows about the trope, or they can pull from it in a looser sense. This is usually determined based on how closely the fictional universe replicates our own world. If a good chunk of the same social issues exist, then the character's actions will be more on the nose. Then it can be inferred that the other characters have an idea of who this type of woman is and the power dynamics that she feeds off of. If the fictional world is a bit different from ours, let's say sexism doesn't exist, then her being a quote-unquote girl boss may be something the audience is aware of that the other characters are not. Either way, whether the girl boss is a girl boss in her universe or just in the eyes of the audience, she is ultimately fictional. And to quote my brother, who was probably quoting a Tumblr post that was quoting a screenshot from Twitter, these characters may not be real, but my enjoyment of them is. So even if you dislike girl boss culture in real life, which most of us do, you may find a character who plays off of similar ideas enjoyable because the piece of media itself has already made the point that it's not good. Harley Quinn is probably one of the most direct examples, and forgive me, I am a season behind, but she more than once mentions breaking the glass ceiling of supervillainy. Obviously, this world is notably fictional. There's a green lady and magic powers. But the DC universe is known to mirror social or socioeconomic issues from the real world too, which makes it even funnier that Harley is putting more emphasis on making literal evil more gender inclusive than preventing that evil to begin with. Not unlike the Democratic Party in the United States.
I mean, a guy robs a bank, he's a criminal mastermind. Woman robs a bank,
She's a crazy bitch!
Well, I think Harley's character is a more direct criticism of girlboss culture because she frequently brings up gender. Princess Bubblegum is another great example of a girlboss character bending the definition, but still maintaining themes of girlbossing in her very fictional universe. Ooh is a post-apocalyptic world that doesn't really have misogyny, so the audience can't pretend Bubblegum's unethical experiments and control issues are empowering. I mean, they wouldn't have been either way, but Adventure Time never pretends that these are good qualities. At first, it may seem progressive that the biggest show on Cartoon Network at the time had a prominent female character who wore pink frilly dresses and created life forms, ruled a massive kingdom, and solved everything with brain power. But really, her character is at its most interesting when she reflects on how she rules, which is to say, not great. Personally, I find her character progressive not because she's pink and frilly and a genius, but because she's pink and frilly and a genius and the show openly discusses her tyrannical behavior. I'm a Bubblegum stan through and through, but Tree Trunks brought up some good points. It doesn't just focus on her unethical experimentation and leadership, but also how she manipulates Finn and uses his hero complex for her personal gain. I mean, that metaphor couldn't have been more direct. Metaphor, allegory, who's to say? Speaking of looser examples of girl bosses, Dahani and Sharpay are examples of characters who learn to remove themselves from their habits that are more reminiscent of girl bossing. While they never directly reference feminism to cover up their toxic behaviors, they are feminine, wealthy, and use this wealth and power to control others or seek approval, which allows the audience to categorize them as girl bosses in their respective media without them being referred to as girl bosses in-universe. Cruella and the Devil Wears Prada are arguably more direct, because these take place in a business setting, which is the source of all good girl bossing in real life. I think what's cool about these movies is that the protagonist has an older woman to learn from, be it through advice or example or threat, and that helps them see where they could end up if they continue on this path.
No, that was different. I didn't have a choice.
Oh no, you chose. You chose to get ahead. You want this life? Those choices are necessary. If I'd cared about anyone or thing, I might have died like so many brilliant women with a drawer
full of unseen genius and a heart full of sad bitterness.
Work is one of the biggest components of girlbossing because, let's face it, girlbossing often goes hand in hand with capitalism, which leads into BoJack Horseman. BoJack Horseman, despite all the bipedal animals, is pretty similar to the world we live in. Gender imbalance, among other social issues, is a frequent theme in the series, and the show's conclusions are pretty depressing and also pretty accurate. Abusers don't get held accountable, entry-level employees have no rights, and not every ending is a happy one. Princess Carolyn is the resident girl boss. She started off at the bottom of the industry and climbed her way to the top, and now spends all of her time being a strong, independent career girl. But the show doesn't paint this as a good thing. One, it cost her mental health. She struggles with the career girls can have it all mentality. Once she accepts that certain things won't go exactly as she imagined, it does go smoother, but holy cow were some of her later season episodes heart-wrenching. Two, while the show occasionally paints her as being cruel, she has a well that's business mindset which is relevant particularly in the season 6 plotline with the assistant strike.
We have one request. We would like to not be treated like garbage.
It appears we are at an impasse.
She has the power in this dynamic, and only after recalling her own time as an assistant does she gain enough empathy to even consider helping them. This is a textbook girl boss. Sure, sexism defined her early career, but she later uses the fact she's an independent woman to defend more dicey actions.
Princess Carolyn, if you hire this guy, what kind of message does that send?
Diane, we both know the industry is screwed up.
I'm not talking to the industry. I'm talking to you. Take some responsibility.
Excuse me?
Hey, cheese plate!
And girl boss culture relies on the idea that the solution to gender-based obstacles is joining the system that oppressed you as opposed to fighting it.
Your own assistant.
An assistant?
That is, of course, if the strike ends.
As a kid who grew up in the 2000s, my first encounter with this type of character was in the 2001 Powerpuff Girls episode Equal Fights. Fun name, by the way. In this episode, a villain named Femme Fatale falsely uses feminism to manipulate the Powerpuff Girls. I think the biggest takeaway when you first watch this is misandry is bad. Which, sure, but if I'm being completely honest, isn't really a pressing issue because it's not systemic. It wasn't until years later that I considered the show could be pointing towards the dangers of misusing feminist rhetoric. Femme Fatale wants Susan B. Anthony coins, which is hilarious by the way, but doesn't understand who Susan B. Anthony is.
Do you even know who she was?
She was,
And referencing activists to serve oneself without understanding the point of that activism is like girlbossing 101. And I don't know if the show had the forethought to intentionally make her white, but girlbossing, while not limited to white women, is 100% a component of white feminism. And on the topic of white feminism and Susan B. Anthony, Britta from Community also misuses feminist rhetoric like all the time.
And instead of Sadie Hawkins, my dance will honor a real feminist icon, someone who worked for women's rights every day of the year, Sophie B. Hawkins.
It was a really...
She also has an obsession with being the most progressive person in the room, usually without much to back it. Britta is performative in every sense of the word, the definition of a white feminist, and she grapples with being performative throughout the series. But the whole slip-up with Sophie B. Hawkins and Susan B. Anthony and the resulting dance episode is one of the funniest. By now, I'm sure you've heard the phrase, I support women's rights and also women's wrongs. I know it's a joke, so don't worry, but I also think some people can mix up fiction and reality. The phrase should be handled with care, but I've seen this used to defend powerful female artists, actors, and politicians, just because they're women, and usually conventionally attractive women. Obviously, it's more dangerous to say these things about real women as opposed to fictional characters, but there can be a connection. I did a drunken Avatar The Last Airbender video a few years back, and one of my opinions that I still maintain to this day is that Kyoshi was not the strong, feminist character that we paint her as. Don't get me wrong, I don't think there's an issue with the writing at all. She was written really well. In my opinion, this all comes down to the slippery slope of audience interpretation. If your knee-jerk reaction is to wonder, didn't she kill Chin the Conqueror? Well, yeah, but by accident. Her only priority was protecting Kyoshi Island, or Kyoshi Peninsula at the time. She let Chin take over most of the Earth Kingdom without lifting a finger, but when he pulled up to her front yard, she was like, no. Even then, she didn't try to kill him. She just separated their land from the continent and he was too stubborn to move. I think the audience really rewrote her as a character. I'm not dragging completely on Kyoshi either because I think this whole my town comes first mentality is actually a unique trait to have for an avatar. But the fanbase has a tendency to paint her as this badass perfect avatar who's totally willing to kill people, which I think is a disservice to her character. Historically, characters deemed feminist were written to be perfect, emotionless, and strong both physically and mentally. Kyoshi wanting to prioritize her people over the good of the world doesn't make her a bad character. It makes her a good, interesting character. Us thinking she's the best avatar, in my opinion, just waters her character down. I want to wrap up by saying this. Girlbossing is bad, but girlboss characters don't have to be if they're serving a purpose in the show or if they learn from their behavior. Or they don't even have to learn, so long as the show or movie doesn't pretend it's a good thing.
No! We need love, not war!
Good idea. Love bazooka!
And that can be hard, because we are so used to Hollywood conflating strong female characters with characters who act stereotypically masculine. And not even like normal masculine, I'm talking Hollywood masculine. And that's obviously not bad on a case-by-case basis, but it's all we were seeing for a while. So I wonder if we're now programmed to think of girl boss characters as good, because they're usually confident and they're usually powerful. But now we have an opportunity to use these characters as a way to criticize modern systems, and I think it's really neat when writers do that.